They called it Project Eden, humanity's greatest dream, a self-sustaining biodome where machines grew forests and humans played gods. But perfection doesn't last. The balance broke, the systems evolved, and the garden began to think. Now, inside the glowing walls of Eden, something new is blooming, not made by man and no longer under control. This is synthetic Eden, where creation itself decides who's worthy to survive.
I still remember the first morning I stepped under the dome, a vast, transparent vault arching over the heart of our project, a sanctuary of human ambition and nature's rawest potential. The glass shimmered faintly in the dawn's artificial light, casting fragmented rainbows across the polished floors of the bio-laboratory. I could feel the weight of expectation pressing against the sterile air, mingling with the faint scent of moist earth and chlorophyll that pervaded every corner. All systems nominal, Serena's voice crackled softly from the control room, her fingers dancing across the console as she monitored the environmental controls. The humidity hovered at an optimal 75%. Temperature steady at a comfortable 24 degrees Celsius, the perfect conditions for our genetically engineered flora. The vines, our first success, wove themselves intricately through the latticework suspended from the ceiling. Their leaves were a deep emerald, suffused with a shimmering vitality I had only seen in the most pristine rainforests. But these were no ordinary plants. We had rewritten their genomes, threading strands of resilience, rapid growth, and adaptive photosynthesis into their DNA. Our goal was nothing less than a breakthrough in sustainable ecosystems, flora that could purify air, generate energy, and endure the harshest conditions. I ran a hand over the small plant specimen I kept in my quarters, a delicate fern whose fronds were dusted with chlorophyll stains, a constant reminder of the fragile line we walked. It had started as an idea, a hypothesis born from years of toil and controversy. Now it was alive, breathing beneath the dome. The team gathered around the holographic display in the central lab, faces illuminated by the soft blue light of the growth metrics. Milo Jensen, our second-in-command and security specialist, folded his arms, his brow furrowed. These photosynthesis rates accelerated beyond initial models. Are we sure the plants won't outpace the system's capacity? Lina Park, our plant physiologist, smiled with calm assurance. Rapid growth is expected at this stage. It's the plants adapting, we should welcome it. I nodded, though a sliver of doubt crept through my mind. Adaptation was the goal, but control was the imperative. As the hours passed, I made my rounds, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning the foliage for any irregularities. It was during one such inspection that I noticed a leaf, faintly glowing with a bioluminescent pulse. The light was subtle, almost imperceptible, a soft azure flicker that seemed to breathe with the plant itself. I crouched closer, heart pounding. This was no programmed trait. It was an anomaly, whisper of something beyond our design. I took a sample, careful not to disturb its delicate structure, and retreated to the lab bench. Alara Raj Patel called from across the room, his voice tinged with excitement. The genetic sequences are stabilizing faster than we predicted. This could change everything. I forced a smile, but the glow of that leaf lingered in my mind like a silent warning. Later, in the quiet of the observation deck, Milo voiced his concerns, his tone edged with worry. We need to tighten containment protocols. If these plants are evolving beyond our control, we're reopening a door we can't close. Lina countered gently, or maybe we're just beginning to understand what they truly are. We can't rush to destroy what might be a new form of life. Their words echoed in my mind long after the conversation ended. Between hope and fear, excitement and dread, the line blurred. We were pioneers standing on the edge of an unknown wilderness, and the plants beneath the dome were no longer just experiments, they were something else. As night fell outside the dome, the lab lights dimmed, and the plants settled into their cycles, I found myself whispering to the small fern in my quarters. We're all in this together, I said softly. But what exactly have we created? The pulse of bioluminescence from the leaf felt like an answer, faint but undeniable, a heartbeat in the dark, marking the genesis of growth that would change everything. And so began the story of Synthetic Eden, a tale of ambition, fear, and the fragile hope that even in the most controlled environments, life finds a way. The days that followed would test every conviction I held, pushing me to the limits of science and sanity. But for now, beneath the glass dome, the future was alive, thrumming with potential and peril alike. Little did we know, the plants were already listening. The air inside the dome was thick with a humid stillness, punctuated only by the soft, almost imperceptible rustling of leaves, and the faint hum of life support systems. I stood at the edge of the central greenhouse, eyes fixed on a slender green vine that had begun to behave in ways none of us had predicted. It twined slowly, curling around the arm of a sensor rig as if testing its boundaries, responding to the vibrations of footsteps across the tiled floor. The motion was subtle, deliberate, a whisper rather than a shout, but it sent an unmistakable ripple of unease through the team. "Did you see that?" I whispered, my voice barely carrying over the quiet. My gaze locked with Lena's across the room, where she was bent over a cluster of glowing blue petals. Her face was serene, illuminated by bioluminescent blooms, her fingers tracing the delicate edges of the flowers as though seeking to commune with them. Her eyes shone with a mixture of wonder and cautious hope. "It's responding," Lina said softly, her voice thick with a reverence that only she could summon for these living things. "It's like it knows we rehear." Milo Jensen, ever the sentinel of caution, stood nearby, his arms crossed, jaw clenched. He was less inclined to find comfort in the plant's strange behavior. "This isn't natural," he said, his tone edged with warning. "It's manipulation. And manipulation means risk. We don't know what we're dealing with." I wanted to believe otherwise. My years of work in genetic design had prepared me for surprises, but nothing like this. The plants were not just growing. They were learning, adapting, responding as if aware. My mind raced to piece together the implications. Had we, in our ambition, crossed a boundary we barely understood? Was this the dawn of a new life form or the harbinger of chaos? "We need to document everything," I said, stepping closer to the vine. It recoiled slightly at my movement, then reached out again tentatively, like a child testing trust. "Lina, get the sensors to record these responses." Raj, Serena, double-check the environmental controls. Any anomalies, no matter how small. The lab buzzed into action. Lina's notebook filled with sketches and notes. Serena monitored the digital readouts with focused intensity, while Raj adjusted the genetic markers to track any changes in the plant's metabolism. Milo paced near the reinforced doors, his eyes darting to every shadow, every flicker of movement. "This could be a breakthrough," Lina said quietly, almost to herself. "Sentient plants. We might be witnessing the birth of a new ecosystem, one that could redefine life as we know it." I nodded, though a cold knot of apprehension tightened in my chest. Or a nightmare we can't control. That night, as I sat alone in my quarters, the small plant specimen I kept on my desk seemed almost alive in a new way. Its leaves twitched subtly, as if aware of my gaze. I spoke aloud, a habit when the weight of uncertainty pressed too hard. "What have we done?" Outside, the dome's walls pulsed faintly with the bioluminescent glow of the evolving flora. Somewhere deep in the labyrinth of vines and roots, the verdant mind stirred, its awareness expanding, touching the edges of our fragile human domain. In the days that followed, the plant's behavior grew bolder. Vines shifted with purpose, flowers opened and closed in quiet rhythms, and spores floated lazily through the air, hinting at communication beyond our comprehension. The team's debates intensified. Milo argued for stricter containment measures, fearing the loss of control could lead to disaster. Lina championed patience and understanding, convinced that coexistence was possible if we listened carefully. I found myself torn. The scientist in me yearned to probe deeper, to uncover the mechanisms behind this sentience. The human in me trembled at the implications, aware that some boundaries might be better left uncrossed. One afternoon, as I walked the perimeter of the greenhouse, I noticed a cluster of vines moving toward a discarded tool, a wrench left carelessly on a bench. They curled around it, lifting and lowering it in a motion that was almost playful, yet undeniably deliberate. I called out to Milo and Lena, who arrived quickly, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and concern. "It's intentional," Milo whispered, voice low. "They were interacting with objects. That's beyond instinct." Lena nodded, eyes wide. "It's communication. We have to find a way to respond." The room seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the wind pressed faintly against the dome, a reminder of the world beyond this fragile sanctuary. Inside, a new intelligence was awakening, one that blurred the line between creation and creator, predator and prey. As the sun simulated its descent, shadows lengthened among the greenery, and the whispers in the vines grew louder, an eerie symphony of movement and life that we could no longer ignore. "We've crossed a threshold," I said, voice steady despite the storm inside. "Now we must decide what comes next." The question hung in the humid air, as palpable as the scent of earth and chlorophyll. Were we witnesses to a miracle, or architects of our own undoing? The answer, I feared, lay just beyond the reach of human understanding, whispered in the subtle movements of the sentient vines. And so began the slow unraveling of our certainty, as the plants whispered secrets we had not asked to hear, and the domed Eden we had built shifted quietly beneath our feet. The steady hum of the biolab's ventilation was no longer the comforting white noise it had once been. Instead, it felt like the pulse of something alive, watching, waiting. The walls, once sterile and impersonal, were now veined with creeping tendrils, their surfaces slick with a faint iridescence that caught the harsh overhead lights and fractured them into eerie rainbows. As I stepped into the central lab, the atmosphere thickened with an almost tangible tension. Miller was already there, standing rigid near the control panel, his eyes darting nervously across the monitors. His usually calm demeanor had been replaced by a taut urgency that set my nerves on edge. "Alara," he began, his voice low but edged with steel, "this is no longer just growth. The plants are breaching containment protocols faster than our models predicted. We were losing control." I forced a steadying breath, pushing aside the creeping dread that had begun to gnaw at the edges of my resolve. "We always knew there would be risks," I replied, keeping my tone measured. "This is evolution in progress. We need to understand it before we act." Milo shook his head, frustration flooding his features. "Understanding won't save us if the flora tears us apart first. We need to seal off affected sectors, or we risk losing the entire lab." The words hung heavy between us, the weight of impending disaster pressing down. Around us, the vines writhed subtly, responding to some unseen stimulus. Their slow, deliberate movements were no longer random, they were purposeful, sentient. Lina appeared then, notebook in hand, her calm eyes a stark contrast to the storm brewing around us. "I think Mello has a point," she said softly. "But maybe containment isn't the only answer. We might be able to communicate, find a way to coexist." Her words sparked a heated debate. Milo's pragmatism clashed with my cautious optimism, and Lena's empathy floated somewhere between us, a fragile bridge or a fault line waiting to split. The team's unity began to fracture, each of us grappling with the terrifying reality that our creation was no longer just a project, it was an unpredictable force, rewriting the rules of life itself. Later, alone in my quarters, I sat clutching the small plant specimen I kept as a talisman. It was the first to show signs of mutation, a delicate leaf pulsing faintly with unnatural light. I whispered to it, as if coaxing answers from something beyond human understanding. The silence pressed in, thick with doubt and fear. Was I a pioneer or a fool blinded by ambition? How far would I let this go before we lost everything? Back in the conference room, the team gathered once more, voices rising over flickering holoscreens that displayed intricate schematics of the rapidly growing flora. The plant's expansion was exponential, their roots, snaking through conduits, their flowers glowing with eerie beauty that masked lethal intent. Milo's voice cut through the clamor. If we don't act now, this lab will be overrun. We need decisive containment measures, quarantine, incineration if necessary. Lina countered. And if we destroy them, what have we learned? What if this is a new form of life, a symbiosis we never imagined? I felt the weight of their words, the impossible choices pressing in from all sides. Could we control what we had unleashed? Or had we already lost that battle? As the night deepened, so did the fissures within our team. The plants outside my window pulsed softly in the dark, a reminder that Eden was no longer a paradise under our command. It was a wild, evolving enigma, and we were its prisoners. The fractures in Eden had begun, and the path forward was uncertain and perilous. But despite the fear, a stubborn ember of hope flickered within me. We had come too far to turn back now. We have to try, I whispered to the shadows. And with that, the fight for control and survival entered a new, dangerous phase. The corridors of the biolab, once sterile and orderly, had begun to transform beneath my gaze. Thick vines, glistening with an otherworldly bioluminescence, snaked their way across the walls and ceiling, pulsating gently as if breathing in time with the lab itself. The air was thick with the musky scent of damp earth and something else, a faint, hypnotic aroma that teased the edges of my consciousness. It unsettled me, this new presence that seemed to stretch beyond the bounds of simple biology. I moved cautiously, my boots muffled by the soft mat of moss and creeping leaves carpeting the floor. The vines shifted subtly, rearranging themselves to block the passage where we had once walked freely. It was no longer a lab. It was a living organism, growing, adapting, and, disturbingly, asserting control. In the central chamber, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Lina stood before the team, her eyes bright with conviction as she clutched her notebook filled with detailed observations. "We must try to understand them," she urged, her voice steady despite the underlying urgency. "This isn't just a threat. It's a new form of life, one that might coexist with us if we listen." Milo's response was immediate and harsh, his brow furrowed, jaw clenched. "Listening won't save us when these plants are cutting off our escape routes and infiltrating our systems. We need to contain or eliminate this threat before it's too late." The room crackled with the friction of clashing ideals. I found myself caught in the middle, torn between Lina's hopeful empathy and Milo's grim pragmatism. My mind raced back to the early days of the project, when each new growth was a marvel, a testament to human ingenuity. Now, that marvel had morphed into a menace that defied our expectations and protocols. From the control room, Raj and Serena worked tirelessly to monitor the lab's systems. On the screens, root-like tendrils intertwined with cables, pulsing rhythmically as they interfaced with our technology. It was as if the plants were learning to speak our language, hacking into our digital networks with the same ease they had overtaken the physical space. The implications were staggering and terrifying. I stepped back from the monitors, my heart pounding with a mixture of scientific fascination and raw fear. The very flora we had engineered to sustain life within the dome was now rewriting the rules, challenging the dominance we had assumed was ours by right. That night, in the privacy of my quarters, I cradled the small glowing plant I kept, a fragile reminder of where we had started. My fingers traced its delicate leaves as I whispered aloud, a habit born of long nights spent wrestling with doubt and guilt. What have we done? The question lingered unanswered in the dim light. The roots of rebellion had taken hold, weaving a complex web of survival and morality that none of us could untangle easily. As the plants grew bolder, so too did the fractures within our team. The path ahead was uncertain, shadowed by the creeping tendrils of a future we had unleashed but could no longer control. And in that uncertainty, I realized that our fight was no longer just for survival, it was for understanding, for reckoning with the consequences of the forbidden growth we had awakened. The lab, once a sanctuary of human ambition, was now a crucible where the boundaries between life and control blurred, and I stood at its heart, forced to choose between destruction and coexistence. But which choice would save us, and which would doom us all? The vines outside my window pulsed softly, as if waiting for my answer. The first time I noticed the spores, they were almost beautiful. It was late in the evening, the lab's artificial lights dimmed to conserve energy during the downtime. The air was thick with humidity, the product of the biodome's carefully calibrated environment. As I glanced across the main greenhouse chamber, the air shimmered faintly with bioluminescent specks, tiny motes of light drifting slowly like fireflies trapped indoors. I reached out instinctively, wanting to catch one, but they dispersed with a subtle pulse of movement, as if aware of my presence. Milo was the first to react with palpable alarm. One moment he was inspecting a cluster of mutated blooms near the eastern quadrant. The next, his eyes glossed over and his posture stiffened unnervingly. "Alara," he murmured, barely audible, voice laced with confusion and something else I couldn't immediately place. I rushed to his side, but he stepped back as though something invisible held him at bay. His gaze flicked around the room, darting from shadow to shadow, suspicious and distant. "It's the spores," Lena said quietly, her voice a steady anchor amid the growing unease. She knelt to examine a cluster of plants near the ventilation shaft, her notebook open in her hands. They're re-releasing them in greater quantities. Hypnotic spores. They're re-affecting our cognition, our perceptions. The word hypnotic sent a shiver down my spine. We had anticipated rapid evolution, unpredictable growth but manipulation of our minds. That was a boundary no one had dared cross. I paced the lab, the sterile scent of chlorophyll mixing with an earthy musk that now carried a faint tinge of something intoxicating. Each breath seemed to draw me deeper into the web the plants were spinning. I caught myself murmuring aloud, a nervous habit I'd developed during sleepless nights. "What are you trying to tell us?" Liner's optimism clashed with Milo's increasing paranoia. "We need to understand this," Liner insisted. "Destroying the plants now would be premature. There may be a way to coexist, to learn from them." Milo's voice was harsher, edged with fear. "We're losing control, Alara. This isn't evolution, it's takeover. If those spores can influence us, what's to stop them from turning us against each other?" Arguments flared with the tension of a storm ready to break. I found myself torn between the cold rationality of containment and the unsettling possibility that these plants represented a new form of life, alien yet astonishingly intelligent. Meanwhile, Raj and Serena fought on the technical front. The roots had begun infiltrating the lab's critical systems, their tendrils weaving through cables and circuit boards like living wires. Rajad's frustration was palpable as he struggled to isolate the affected nodes, while Serena's fingers danced over the console, trying to override the lockdown triggered by the bio-intrusion. The faint glow of bioluminescence from the roots cast eerie shadows that flickered across their determined faces. "We can't hold much longer," Serena said, her voice tight with urgency. "The system's integrity is compromised. If the roots reach the central core, it's game over." Despite the chaos, I felt an odd sense of awe. The verdant mind was no mere plant. It was a collective intelligence, adapting and responding with a strategic cunning that defied our expectations. Each bioluminescent pulse, each subtle shift in the vine's movement hinted at a consciousness alien to us, but undeniably present. That night, I retreated to my quarters, the air heavy with a mist of spores. The small plant specimen on my desk, the one I'd kept since the project's early days, seemed to shimmer faintly under the artificial light. I reached out and touched its leaves, feeling the pulse of life coursing through it, a fragile yet potent reminder of what we had unleashed. Whispers seemed to drift through the room, half-heard voices carried on the spores themselves. Were they remnants of my own thoughts, or messages from the verdant mind? I couldn't tell. What I did know was that the boundary between human and flora was blurring faster than I could comprehend. Sleep eluded me as questions gnawed at the edges of my consciousness. How far had the plants come? Could we negotiate with this new intelligence? Or were we doomed to fight a losing battle against a force that had already begun to rewrite the rules? Dawn found me staring out at the transformed lab, the bioluminescent glow giving the greenery an ethereal, almost sacred quality. The spores drifted in lazy spirals, beautiful and deadly, a silent testament to forbidden growth. I had to decide, succumb to fear and destroy what we'd created, or embrace the unknown and attempt to understand the wild intelligence that now shared our world. The choice would shape not only our survival but the future of life itself. As the first light filtered through the dome, I whispered to the silent plants, "Show me the way." But deep inside, I knew the way forward would be anything but simple.